Welcome to my channel. I'm Jeanette with Vivo Vintage Designs. Products used in this video are now linked in the description box, but I'm also pinning it in the comment section to make it easier for you to find. All right, now let's get started. Hi friends, today we're going to paint a daffodil, and this is a really easy way to do this. So I hope that you enjoy the video and that you follow along. I'm using my Kuretake paints. I have my Etcher art journal. It's 100% cotton cold press paper. So I'm starting out by putting a dot in the center and then 3 dots, and I'm trying to space them evenly on the outside. And then I'm going to use the tip of my brush and I'm going to create the shape of a petal. And you can see I'm wiggling my brush simply to make the petals a little bit more interesting, but of course you don't have to do that. You can just paint in the shape of a petal. While the paint is still wet, I'm going to pick up a little bit of orange and drop it at the tip of each of those petals and a little bit at the center as well. And then off camera, I'll use my blow dryer to dry this paper completely before I begin adding the second set of leaves. So my paper is now dry, and you can see that I'm dropping in a little dot in between the petals that we previously painted. And now I'm just using the tip of the brush to shape my new petals. And while they're wet, I will add a little bit of orange to the tip of each one of them. And then I will make sure that the paper is dry again before I begin adding anything else. So now that my paper is dry, you can see I'm mixing the yellow and orange together in a heavy consistency, and using the tip of my brush, I'm dotting in the shape of a circle. And while the paint is still wet, I'm using a clean damp brush and I'm softening the inside of that circle. Then I'm going to use a smaller brush and I'm going to use it to draw some of that orange towards the center and creating these little lines to give that center a little bit of depth. Now I'm going to paint my stem, and I think I made it a little bit too thick, but that's okay. It looked fine towards the end. So I used a sap green, and now I'm using a clean damp brush and I'm trying to lighten one side of that stem, and then I'm picking up a heavier consistency of a deeper green and I'm running it along one side of the stem to create a shadow, and making sure that it was a little bit darker at the top where it meets the flower, because the petals would be casting a shadow. And now I'm adding a little bit of red to that orange mix you see on my palette. And I'm using the tip of the brush to create those little lines and draw them to the center of the center to give it a little bit more depth. Now I'm mixing a little bit of green with the yellow because I want to create a little separation between the first set of petals that we painted and the second set. So I'm adding that green at the base and around the sides of the petals that we first painted to give them a little depth so they appear as though they are the back petals and the front petals stand out a little bit more. So I'm adding it at the base of the petal and then running it along the side, and then using a clean damp brush to blend it into the yellow. And you can see that it separates them nicely. Now I'm using a very light consistency of paint on my brush, and I'm using the tip of the brush to create these little lines, and I'm kind of flicking my wrist and just using the very tip of the brush to create some fine lines and add a little bit of texture and detail to each one of these petals. And if I create lines that are a little bit too thick or too sharp, or too dark, I will use a clean damp brush to soften them up a little bit. So I'm going to continue with that process for each of the petals, again adding a little bit of interest and detail. Now I'm adding a couple of little green dots to the center of the center. And I noticed that the outside of my circle blended too much into the inside of the circle, so I've added a little bit of red to that orange, and I'm going to dot the outside again, just to deepen the color a little bit and make it stand out from the inside of that cone. And then I've cleaned my brush, made sure that it was just damp, and I'm drawing those lines back into the center again to give the center of the flower some depth. And now I'm just adding a little bit more detail wherever I think I may need it. I'm just using the very tip of this tiny little brush to create some texture in the petals. Now let's paint some leaves. I've mixed a combination of greens and some yellow, and I'm using a larger brush, and you can see I start with the tip of the brush, and as I draw that, or rather pull that brush across the paper, I add pressure so that the leaf broadens. And while the paint is still dry, I'm going to add a darker shade of green along the side to create a little bit of shadow. While that leaf dries, we're going to paint a second one. Tip of the brush, pressure, and then I lift back to the tip of that brush. And again, while the paint is still wet, I'm going to add a deeper green along one side to create a little bit of shadow, and then I'll use the brush to blend it in a little bit. Now that the second leaf, rather the first leaf is dry, I'm going to deepen the color on the tip of that petal so it looks as though it's folded over. And then I'm going to sharpen up my edges a little bit. Well, we are nearing the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you do give this a try. It's a really fun and easy way to paint a really pretty daffodil. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section. I'll always get back to you. And please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.